Hello and welcome to my channel. Now before I start, I want to call out all black people. Guys, let's all gather here because this video is disturbing. Black Americans, Africans, please come here real quick because apparently whites are trying to explain something to us. The videos I'm about to share with you get progressively worse the longer they go on. Now in these two videos, the two white men talk about how we Africans and black Americans would have been in a worse spot today if slavery had never existed. Another one goes on to say that we Africans need to be grateful for slavery because the Africans that were taken over into slavery got to know and learn the gospel when they got there. He continued to say there's lots of African, if they hadn't been taken over there, wouldn't have known the gospel, and lots of Africans wouldn't have been in heaven right now. Wow. This is, I don't know, this is just, it's a lot to take in. It's very sad and a lot to take in. In short, these two videos are justifying slavery by coming up with excuses they believe helped us black people, when in actual sense, we all know that this brought more harm to us than good. Let's check out these shocking videos together.
Africans that were brought over into slavery, which wasn't right, but they got the gospel when they got here. And you know what? I bet you there's a lot of Africans that if they hadn't have been brought over, not saying it was right, don't misunderstand, not justifying the slavery in the situation, but God, I still believe, used it. And now I'm sure there's a lot of Africans that got the gospel and they're in heaven right now because they got the gospel. You know, what would be better? For them to have lived their entire life in Africa free, doing their voodoo or whatever, and then dying and going to hell, right? Or what happened? And then they go to heaven. They get the opportunity. Now, again, it doesn't justify it. The ends do not justify the means, but this is how God works.
In fact, it seems rather clear that black Americans are doing better here today than they would be had their ancestors generations ago never been brought to these shores. We can prove this point by simply asking which African country anyone asking for reparations would prefer to live in. The answer, of course, is none of them. Now, you might offer the rebuttal that if slavery never existed, if we're reimagining history without that institution at all, then Africa itself would be in a better shape, better place, and better shape, and maybe indeed black Americans would be better off there. But this seems highly unlikely, and it also ignores the fact that Africans participated in slavery and the slave trade as much as they were victims of it. Not to mention, if we're reimagining the world without African slavery, then we have to also imagine it without all other forms of global slavery, since African slavery was merely one variety, one offshoot of this global institution. And now we have totally, at that point, rewritten the history of the world in a way so dramatic that it's absolutely impossible to say which individuals today would end up worse or better in this alternate universe. I mean, if you go back in time and get rid of slavery from the entire world, you have just, it's impossible to say what the world looks like right now. Actually, what we can say is that we'd all end up worse. All of us today would be in a worse spot if slavery never existed at all across the entire globe. Because a change that significant would likely shift the course of events in a way that would mean none of us would even exist. It would be a world full of other people who are not us. So I know that I benefit today from virtually everything my ancestors did and everything did to them, because if any of that had not happened, there's a very good chance that I never would have come into being. And as I see it, I benefit from being if the other option is not being.
Now, after watching these two videos, I feel really bad that they can even come out like that, talk more of using those lame excuses or whatever they are calling them as a way of justifying slavery, in as much as they are saying they are not trying to justify what happened. Now, more than 400 years since over 12 million men and women were forcibly removed from their native land in Africa along treacherous routes and delivered as slaves in American Europe. The impact of that historic forced migration continues to shape the continent and redefine the social, cultural, economic, and political development of us African people, robbing African countries of the much-needed labor force by taking men and women at their prime and productive age. Not only affected the economic activities then, but this has been attributed to the poverty experienced in the continent over the years. If slavery never took place, the 72% gap in average income between Africa and the rest of the world would not be experienced today. Now, human capital from post-slave trade was one of the most valued assets across African societies. Slaves were captured to go work in plantations in America and Europe at the height of the agricultural revolution. Now, you can imagine the difference this would have made to the economic development of the continent if this strong and energetic labor force was allowed to develop our own farmlands and societies. But what perhaps continued to be the most pronounced impact of slavery on contemporary Africa is ire to the season and value judgments that created class, social status, and respect based on color. Then they want to come here and try to justify their actions. Hello, we are looking at the effects this has had on us for a long time now. Anyway, let's take a look at what some people had to say about these videos. Now, the first comment reads, saying I'm not justifying it doesn't negate that he is in fact justifying slavery. The way I watched this so many times because my brain will not let me comprehend this ridiculousness. I can't believe people really think like this. It's wild. Make it make sense, because this is the same excuse masters give. Oh, you went through slavery, systemic oppression, and are to the season, but you get the gospel? Make it make sense. Now, I kept thinking, and my eyebrows couldn't go higher. Then he kept speaking. This is what they have to tell themselves so they won't feel like the barbaric subhumans they are. How are they so confident heaven and hell exist? Like late stage capitalism seems like hell to me. They all actually believe this. This is why reparations never happened and will never happen. Because listen to them talk about it today. This one says God created slavery because people didn't know he existed. Like what? Is this how his God works? You've benefited from it only because of your race, just like us black people didn't benefit because of our race, and now you're trying to justify it. Shame. I feel like my country would have eventually learned to utilize its resources on their own. We are not stupid. We just weren't trying to use our resources. Now, this inhuman theft of labor did contribute to our current situation, but at an inexcusable cost. I would be very okay living in a less technologically advanced age if it meant slavery never happened. If slavery never existed, we would have always seen each other as equal, and that sounds like a much better word. Now, these are some of the comments from people. There's just a lot of them, and I can't read all of them. Well, what do you think about these two videos? Kindly share your thoughts in the comments. From me, to bye-bye, and see you in my next video.